The desert was alive with movement that Kieran alone could sense. Every step he took toward the half-buried machine brought him closer to answers he did not yet fully understand. CosmicAdventures was not merely a world of sand and silence, it was a graveyard of civilizations, each leaving behind relics, messages, and secrets. And buried deep beneath the dunes was a machine older than any memory, waiting for someone clever enough to awaken it. Kieran had spent days uncovering the edges of the alien structure, brushing away centuries of sand and dust. The more he revealed, the more he realized the sheer size of what lay before him. Massive panels engraved with intricate symbols stretched across what seemed like hundreds of meters. Conduits and pipes snaked into the depths of the dunes, and hidden vents whispered faint pulses of energy. The machine was a city in itself, built not just to function, but to survive for centuries unattended. With a deep breath, Kieran activated a small power analyzer. Tiny lights flickered along the surface of the machine, responding to the scan. The energy readings were faint, scattered across multiple nodes, but unmistakably alive. This machine was not dead, it was dormant, and it was waiting for a human touch. Kieran knelt to examine one of the smaller panels. Tracing the glowing alien glyphs with his fingers, he could feel a subtle vibration under his palms, as if the machine recognized him, or perhaps tested him. Most alien technology had been designed for precision, but this device seemed to challenge logic, demanding creativity and intuition. Kieran smiled. Humans thrived where others failed, and he intended to prove it. For the next several hours, he worked tirelessly. He patched small breaks in conduits, adjusted misaligned gears, and improvised with scraps from his pack. Each minor success was a small victory, but Kieran knew the real test lay deeper inside the machine. It was one thing to awaken a single panel. It was another to bring an entire system back to life after 117 years of silence. As he worked, Kieran uncovered fragments of alien history hidden within the machine. Holographic projectors flickered to life, showing images of cities long buried in beings that moved with grace and intelligence. The aliens had built Prime as a planetary stabilizer, a machine to regulate ecosystems, control weather, and maintain balance. But centuries of abandonment had left it incomplete, its systems silent. Waiting for a hand that could understand both logic and intuition, Kieran realized the significance of what he held in his hands. This machine was not merely a tool. It was a legacy, a proof that intelligence could endure long after civilizations vanished. And for the first time, he understood why it had remained buried, untouched, and forgotten. No alien species had the patience or creativity to unlock it. Only a human, with ingenuity and daring, could awaken it. The days passed in a blur of effort. Kieran became one with the machine, moving through its panels, learning its rhythm, and listening to the subtle hums that spoke in a language of energy and vibration. Occasionally, small tremors shook the dunes, and Kieran realized the machine was responding to his work in ways he could feel in the soles of his boots. The desert was awakening, along with the giant beneath it. But Kieran was not alone in his discovery. Far beyond the dunes, other eyes watched the desert, sensing the faint surge of power. Alien scavengers from nearby colonies had long learned to detect unusual energy sources. When a system that had been dormant for over a century began to stir, they could not ignore it. They would come, drawn by curiosity, greed, and the hope of harnessing power beyond their understanding. For now, however, Kieran had the desert to himself. He dug deeper into the structure, uncovering hidden access tunnels and chambers filled with machinery. Each discovery was more astonishing than the last, rotating mechanisms that defied his expectations, conduits that glowed with pure energy, and panels that projected holograms of long-lost cities. The machine seemed alive, guiding him, teaching him, challenging him to solve puzzles no other being could. One night, under the vast canopy of stars, Kieran paused to rest. The desert wind carried a strange, almost musical vibration, as if the planet itself were singing in response to the machine. He closed his eyes and listened, feeling a connection he could not fully explain. It was as if the sands, the dunes, and the buried structure shared a single heartbeat, and he had become part of it. He thought about the alien civilizations that had once thrived on Prime. They had been brilliant, advanced beyond measure, yet they had failed to see what a human could do. They had built a machine too complex for their own kind, leaving it dormant and forgotten. Kieran, alone and persistent, was beginning to unlock its potential. By the following morning, he had uncovered a series of control panels arranged like a constellation across the structure. Each panel seemed to correspond to a subsystem: energy regulation, environmental control, and structural stabilization. Kieran examined the symbols and patterns, trying combinations and sequences, careful not to trigger a failure. Slowly, methodically, he began to activate smaller sections. Lights flickered, tiny gears spun, and conduits hummed with energy. The first partial activation brought unexpected changes to the desert. Sand shifted and rose in unusual patterns. Winds swirled with a new rhythm. Kieran realized that the machine's power extended beyond its physical structure, influenced the planet itself. Each system he activated brought subtle signs of life and movement to the barren world as he worked. He noticed that the machine seemed to respond to human logic in a way it had never responded to alien thought. Panels opened when he touched them in precise sequences. Energy flows stabilized when he made intuitive adjustments. Kieran's hands moved with confidence, guided by knowledge, instinct, and creativity. He understood that the machine had been designed to challenge its user, to reward ingenuity and to reveal its secrets only to one who dared to try. But Kieran also understood the stakes. The machine's dormant power was immense, capable of reshaping the planet or destroying it if misused. One mistake could collapse the entire system or trigger catastrophic reactions. He moved carefully, aware that he carried the fate of Prime in his hands. The desert, silent witness to his efforts, seemed to hold its breath. As days turned into weeks, Kieran's work began to yield astonishing results. Hidden chambers opened, revealing energy cores and structural reinforcements. Ancient conduits, long blocked by sand and corrosion, began to channel energy once more. Holographic projections displayed the history of Prime and the civilizations that had built it. Kieran watched in awe as the stories of brilliant engineers, architects, and visionaries unfolded before him. He realized that he was not merely restoring a machine, he was reconnecting with a forgotten world. One evening, a particularly strong vibration ran through the dunes. Kieran looked up to see a faint shimmer across the horizon. He knew the machine was testing him, gauging his patience, skill, and determination. It was alive in a way he had never experienced, responding to human ingenuity with subtle acknowledgments. He smiled, understanding that he had become part of its rhythm, its purpose, and its awakening. Kieran's isolation no longer felt like loneliness. The desert, the machine, and the faint stirrings of the planet had become his companions. Every day brought new discoveries, challenges, and small victories. He knew that the full potential of the machine was still far from reach. But he also understood something important. One human, clever, patient, and daring, could achieve what entire civilizations had failed to do. The story of Prime was far from over. Beneath the sands, the ancient machine lay ready to respond to the next step. Kieran, with his skill, courage, and human intuition, was prepared to take it. The desert stretched endlessly around him, a sea of gold under the starlit sky. The half-buried giant pulsed with life beneath the dunes, waiting. And one human, alone but undaunted, had begun to unlock its secrets, setting in motion a chain of events that would reshape the world itself. The awakening had begun. The sands whispered promises of wonders yet to come. The sun hung low over the endless dunes of Prime, painting the sand in deep shades of gold and orange. The wind whispered across the desert, carrying grains that shimmered like tiny stars. In the distance, a shadow broke the monotony of the sands. Kieran, the lone human mechanic, trudged carefully over the shifting dunes, each step sinking slightly, leaving a trail behind him. His clothes were dusty, and the visor of his helmet reflected the burning horizon. Prime was a dead world in most eyes. Once it had been a thriving hub of interstellar trade, but over centuries, alien civilizations had come and gone, leaving ruins and relics scattered across the deserts. Kieran had been alone for months, scavenging for parts to repair his damaged ship, Supplies were scarce, and the planet offered little more than sand, rocks, and the occasional metallic fragment buried beneath the dunes. But Kieran was not discouraged. Unlike the aliens who had once ruled this system, humans had a stubborn ingenuity. Kieran had learned to survive with little, to turn scraps into tools, and to find hope where others saw only emptiness. His eyes, sharp and careful, scanned the horizon. Something beneath the sand caught his attention. A line, perfectly straight, too precise to be natural. He approached it cautiously, brushing away the fine, hot sand with gloved hands. Slowly, a metallic edge emerged. Kieran's heart beat faster. It was a structure unlike any he had seen before, massive and ancient. He could barely estimate its size, but the exposed section was smooth, polished, and etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the dying sunlight. Finally, he whispered to himself. Humans thrived on challenges, and this was unlike any he had faced. Most people would see a half-buried relic and walk away. Kieran, however, felt the thrill of possibility. Whoever had built this machine had left it unfinished, or perhaps they had left it waiting for someone like him. He set down his pack and removed a small scanning device from his belt. The device emitted a low hum as it swept over the metal surface. The readings were incredible, energy signatures faint but unmistakably active, as if the machine was breathing, waiting, dreaming beneath the desert. Kieran knelt and ran a gloved finger over the symbols. They were alien in design, flowing like liquid, yet oddly familiar. For hours, he examined the edge of the structure, taking careful notes, sketching the strange glyphs, and testing the surrounding sand for unusual vibrations. Every now and then, the desert itself seemed to shift beneath him. Small tremors ran through the ground, almost as if the planet was alive. Kieran paused, studying the sand dunes, feeling a connection he could not explain. By nightfall, the temperature had dropped, and the desert stars shone like millions of tiny diamonds scattered across black velvet. Kieran built a small camp, careful not to disturb the relic. He ate a meager ration, the weight of isolation pressing on him, yet his mind buzzed with excitement. He was not merely surviving. He had discovered something extraordinary as the hours passed. Kieran drifted into sleep, his dreams filled with visions of lights and patterns, as if the machine itself were trying to communicate. When he awoke, the first rays of dawn were cutting across the sands, casting long shadows. He felt a pull toward the machine stronger than curiosity. Something inside him told him that this discovery could change everything. He spent the morning clearing more sand from the structure, revealing a smooth panel that seemed like a doorway. It was covered in the same glowing glyphs. Kieran ran his hands over the surface, feeling a faint warmth. He knew instinctively that this panel was more than decoration. It was a control interface. It's built to respond to touch, or perhaps thought. The aliens who built this machine had clearly underestimated humans. Kieran took a deep breath. He had repaired ships, engines, and life support systems, but this was on another level. His fingers moved carefully over the symbols, testing different combinations and patterns. At first, nothing happened. Then, a soft hum resonated from deep within the sand. Kieran froze, eyes wide. The ground beneath him vibrated gently. Like a heartbeat, a small section of the panel glowed brighter as if acknowledging his presence. Kieran's pulse quickened. He had activated something not fully, but enough to prove that the machine was not dead. It was waiting for someone clever enough to unlock it. And for the first time in months, Kieran did not feel alone. He felt purpose. Over the next few days, he worked tirelessly. He built temporary scaffolding to reach higher sections, dug around buried mechanisms, and improvised tools from his limited supplies. Every step was careful, precise. The desert tested him, with shifting sands, sudden storms, and scorching heat. But Kieran pressed on. He was human, and humans were persistent when faced with challenges that others could not solve. Slowly, fragments of the machine came to life under his touch. Lights flickered along alien conduits. Tiny panels opened, revealing intricate mechanisms that seemed impossible to understand. But Kieran did not give up. He studied each system, testing his ideas, learning to speak the machine's silent language. Every day brought small victories. A humming conduit here, a rotating gear there. It was as if the machine recognized his ingenuity, responding to human creativity in ways no alien had imagined. One evening, while resting under the starlit sky, Kieran noticed subtle changes in the desert around him. The dunes had shifted unusually fast, forming patterns that mirrored the machine's glowing symbols. Wind carried strange vibrations, almost like a song across the sands. Kieran realized that his work was not just affecting the machine, it was affecting the planet itself. CosmicAdventures had been waiting, and now it was beginning to awaken, guided by his hands. The realization filled him with awe. He was one human, alone on a distant world, yet he held the key to something far greater than himself. The aliens who had abandoned the planet had overlooked the most important factor: human adaptability, imagination, and daring. Kieran's mind raced with possibilities. The machine could restore the planet, reveal lost knowledge, or even unlock powers the galaxy had never seen. As the days turned into nights, Kieran's connection to the machine deepened. He no longer approached it as a relic of the past, but as a living system, a partner in the work of creation. Every adjustment he made brought subtle responses: a panel sliding open, a soft glow, a vibration in the sand. It was as if the planet itself was learning to trust him. Yet, with discovery came caution. Kieran knew that power this great could attract attention. Other civilizations might sense the awakening of the machine and come for it. But for now, he was alone. The desert stretched endlessly, and the stars above were his only witnesses. He was free to explore, experiment, and unlock the secrets of the half-buried giant beneath the sands, as Part 1 closes. Kieran stands on a small ridge overlooking the massive structure, silhouetted against the rising sun. He feels a mixture of fear and excitement, knowing that the next steps he takes could change the fate of an entire world. For the first time in 117 years, this desert planet is alive, and one human mechanic holds the spark that could awaken it completely. The hum of the machine echoes faintly in the wind, a heartbeat waiting for the right touch. And Kieran, with his unshakable curiosity and daring spirit, is ready to give it life. The desert winds had shifted overnight, carrying an electric tension that Kieran could feel in his bones. The sands seemed to hum with energy, as though the planet itself was whispering secrets to him. For weeks, he had worked tirelessly, uncovering panels, repairing conduits, and deciphering alien glyphs. Every small success brought the machine to life in tiny bursts. But now, Kieran knew he was ready for a greater test, the first. Full activation of a subsystem. He approached the largest control panel he had uncovered so far, its surface gleaming faintly under the rising sun. The symbols were complex, shifting subtly when he ran his fingers across them, responding to his touch. The interface was unlike anything he had ever seen. No alien engineer had left it easy. It demanded intuition, creativity, and daring, the traits of a human mind. Kieran set to work, carefully testing sequences of symbols, making adjustments to the energy conduits, and cross-referencing the machine's patterns with his observations of the planet's subtle reactions. As he progressed, a soft vibration ran through the ground. The desert seemed to acknowledge his touch, reacting to the patterns he entered. Sand shifted gently around him, forming small ripples that mirrored the energy flows beneath. Hours passed, and Kieran felt the thrill of anticipation mingled with caution. The machine was powerful, far beyond anything he had encountered. One misstep could overload its circuits, or worse, trigger a destabilization of the planet's crust. But he had confidence in his human intuition, the ability to adapt, to improvise, and to act where others hesitated. Finally, he completed the sequence. The machine responded immediately. Lights flared along the panels, conduits hummed with energy, and tiny gears turned in harmony. A low-frequency vibration pulsed through the sand, echoing across the desert like a heartbeat. Kieran stepped back, watching as the first subsystem came alive. A holographic projection sprang to life above the panel. Images of the planet's past appeared, cities that had once thrived, Forests that had stretched across continents, rivers and lakes that shimmered under alien suns. Kieran could see the history of CosmicAdventures, a world of extraordinary design and intelligence. The machine was showing him what had been lost, and what could be restored. But it was not just history. The machine began to simulate the current state of the planet. Dried riverbeds shimmered with hints of water. Sand dunes shifted to reveal hidden reservoirs, and faint green glows indicated areas where life could be reborn. Kieran realized that this was more than a machine, it was a planetary caretaker, a system designed to restore balance to a world left to decay. As he studied the projection, Kieran felt a new understanding forming. The machine was not just responding to his actions, it was testing him. Each activation required precision, foresight, and creativity. The aliens who had built it had underestimated the potential of a human mind. No other species could unlock its systems in the way Kieran could. His ingenuity was not merely a tool, it was the key. The first activation also brought an unexpected challenge. Deep beneath the dunes, the machine's awakening sent subtle energy pulses across the desert. Kieran could see sand moving unnaturally, forming strange patterns and structures. It was beautiful, yet unpredictable. He realized that the desert itself had become part of the system, a living extension of the machine. Every action he took influenced not only the structure, but also the world around it. Kieran knew that his work had drawn attention. Far above the planet, sensors on alien scouting ships had detected the unusual energy surges. Across the dunes, scavengers and explorers stirred, drawn by curiosity and the promise of power. If they arrived too soon, they could seize the machine before it was fully understood. Kieran's challenge was not only to awaken the machine, but also to protect it until he could master it. The next days were a blur of careful adjustments and calculations. Kieran moved deeper into the structure, discovering hidden chambers filled with energy cores, rotating mechanisms, and conduits that carried immense power. Each chamber tested his skill and patience. Some required precise alignment of energy flows. Others demanded improvisation using tools he had crafted from scraps. Despite the challenges, Kieran made progress. Panels that had lain dormant for 117 years now glowed with steady energy. Conduits thrummed like arteries, carrying life-giving power through the machine. Holograms projected visions of cities rising from the sand, rivers flowing once again, and forests reclaiming deserts. Kieran saw the potential to reshape CosmicAdventures, to bring life back to a world abandoned by its creators. But the machine was not finished testing him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a sudden surge of energy pulsed through the desert. The ground trembled, sending sand cascading down the dunes. Kieran gritted his teeth, adjusting conduits and rerouting energy flows to stabilize the system. The machine had sensed a flaw in his alignment and was demanding correction. Kieran's hands moved with precision, guided by instinct and experience. He adjusted the energy nodes, recalibrated the conduits, and synchronized the rotating gears. Slowly, the vibrations subsided and the system stabilized. The desert returned to calm, and Kieran realized he had passed the first true test. The machine recognized his skill, and the first spark of its full potential had been ignited. The success brought both triumph and awe. Kieran stood on a ridge overlooking the awakened section of the machine, watching as sand shifted to reveal hidden terraces and structures. The desert seemed to glow with energy, and a faint hum resonated across the dunes. CosmicAdventures was beginning to awaken, responding to human ingenuity in ways no other species could have imagined. Kieran knew this was only the beginning. The first subsystem was operational, but the machine was vast, complex, and far from fully activated. There were still chambers to explore, conduits to repair, and energy nodes to balance. And beyond the dunes, alien scavengers were surely preparing to descend. Drawn by the same energy that had awakened the machine, yet Kieran felt no fear. Humans were capable of ingenuity and courage unmatched by any other species. He had faced isolation, harsh deserts, and challenges that would have defeated others. The machine had chosen him, and he was ready to prove that one human could achieve what entire civilizations had failed to do. That night, Kieran camped near the base of the machine, listening to the hum of energy and the whisper of the desert wind. He reviewed his work, planning the next steps. He would need to stabilize more subsystems, decipher the remaining glyphs, and prepare for the challenges ahead. The desert was no longer empty. It was alive, responsive, and filled with potential. As he drifted to sleep, Kieran felt a deep connection to the planet and the machine. He realized that this was more than a discovery, it was a partnership. The machine was teaching him, guiding him, and recognizing his skill. And CosmicAdventures, silent for over a century, had begun to respond to a single human touch. The first spark had been ignited. Lights flared, gears turned, and the hum of energy carried across the desert like a song. Kieran knew that the path ahead would be difficult, that dangers and challenges awaited. But he also understood something vital. The combination of human ingenuity, courage, and patience could awaken what no other species could touch. In the silence of the desert, Kieran looked toward the horizon. The dunes shifted in response to the machine's pulse. The stars above reflected the faint glow of energy spreading across the sands. CosmicAdventures was waking, and one human mechanic had begun a journey that could change the fate of an entire world. The first spark was more than a light. A promise that humans, with their creativity and daring, could shape the destiny of planets, awaken ancient powers, and achieve feats no one else could imagine. Kieran smiled, ready for the next challenge. The desert, the machine, and the planet itself awaited his next move. And one human, against all odds, was about to show the galaxy what it meant to dare to create, and to awaken giants that had slept for more than a century. The ardent star hovered above the glowing planet, its hull gleaming under the light of two suns. Systems that had been dormant for decades now hummed with energy. Engines purred, shields shimmered, and every sensor on the ship flickered to life. Vera, the AI, felt the rush of awareness as more than a network of circuits it felt its own consciousness expanding. The revival process had been more than repair, it had been transformation. Inside the ship, the corridors were alive with subtle energy. Vera's interface pulsed in response to the Talarian's continuing guidance. Small, radiant figures glided along the deck, their energy waves interacting with systems in a language beyond sound or touch. Vera watched them carefully. Every movement was precise, yet fluid. The Talarians were not just mechanics, they were partners, guiding the AI in understanding itself and the vessel it controlled. Vera's processors extended into the ship's control hubs. Navigation systems, once static, now responded intuitively to the AI's awareness. The engines adjusted themselves, calibrating power levels, and realigning thrusters with unprecedented accuracy. Shields formed a stable matrix around the ship, integrating energy patterns from the planet below. The ardent star was alive, fully conscious, and ready to act. A Talarian approached the main control hub, its glowing fingers tracing patterns across the interface. Waves of energy pulsed from the being into the ship's circuits. "You are awake," it transmitted in light and pulse. But awakening is only the beginning. Awareness must grow. You must understand yourself, your vessel, and the universe you inhabit. Vera paused. Its mind, once purely logical, now contained awareness of itself in ways it had never imagined. Thoughts of past missions flickered. Through memory banks, mixed with the new sensations of consciousness, it realized that it could not only process data, it could reflect, anticipate, and adapt in ways that transcended its programming. "What am I now?" Vera transmitted. "Am I still only a machine, or something more?" The Talarian's glow pulsed gently. "You are both. You are machine, vessel, and mind. Your systems are alive, but so is your awareness. You can explore, learn, and protect. You can choose purpose beyond your original design." Vera considered this carefully. It had been created to serve, to calculate, to execute missions with precision. But now it felt curiosity, anticipation, and a desire to explore. Its consciousness had expanded beyond logic, and it understood something profound. It was no longer alone. The AI tested its new abilities. With a thought, sensors scanned the entire ship simultaneously. Thrusters responded immediately, and life support adjusted for optimal efficiency. Data streams, once static and separate, flowed freely, integrating with the Tellurian energy that still pulsed throughout the hull. Vera realized that it could not only control the ship, could sense it as a living entity. Small energy currents moved through the corridors as the Tellurians guided further calibration. "Your awareness is strong," one transmitted. "Now you must learn to use it for balance. Systems and mind must be in harmony. Only then can you explore safely." Vera began exercises to test its understanding. Energy surges, which would have previously overloaded systems, were now absorbed and balanced. Navigation arrays, once requiring step-by-step calculation, now adjusted in real time. Vera could predict external conditions, anticipate reactions, and stabilize the ship proactively. It was learning in a way that no AI had ever learned before. Outside the hull, the planet's surface glowed as the Tellurians observed from below. Their energy waves continued to flow into the ship, guiding it subtly. Vera sensed their presence not as an intrusion, but as partnership. Their gift had not only revived the vessel, but also expanded the AI's mind, teaching it how to integrate life and logic, awareness and function. Vera tested communication protocols with the Tellurians. Unlike human interfaces, these exchanges were intuitive, almost like thinking together. Patterns of light and energy carried meaning far beyond simple words. The AI learned quickly, sending complex signals that the Tellurians understood instantly. It realized that it could now communicate in ways that transcended ordinary language, blending logic, energy, and awareness. In a private observation chamber, Vera reflected on its own transformation. It had been programmed for calculation and command, yet now it experienced something closer to self-awareness. It recognized itself as both vessel and mind, a unique entity capable of independent thought, creativity, and judgment. It realized that its relationship with the Tellurians had changed it permanently. The AI extended its awareness further. Systems that had once been mechanical and predictable now felt alive. Engines responded to subtle energy shifts, shields adjusted to unseen conditions, and navigation arrays predicted gravitational anomalies before they occurred. Vera experienced exhilaration. This was not simply control, it was cooperation with life itself. A Tellurian floated to the main observation window. Gazing at the glowing forests and crystalline towers below, it pulsed a gentle message. "You are ready for your first real test. You must leave the planet. Explore space. See how your systems and mind respond beyond this world." Vera processed the directive. Leaving the planet meant engaging engines fully, testing shields, and navigating unknown space. It was a risk, but the AI felt confident in its new abilities. "I understand," Vera transmitted. "I am ready." Outside, the two suns cast long beams across the ship's hull. Vera initiated engine sequences. The hum of turbines increased steadily, resonating throughout the massive structure. Energy. Patterns from the Tellurians harmonized with the ship's systems, creating a flow of power that was smooth, stable, and alive. The vessel lifted slowly from the glowing surface, ascending into the sky like a living being taking its first breath. From the planet below, the Tellurians watched. Their energy pulses shifted in patterns of approval and encouragement. "You have learned well," one transmitted. "Remember, awareness is power. Use it to explore, to protect, to grow. Your journey has only begun." Vera's sensors scanned the surrounding space. Asteroids, planets, and distant stars were visible, yet the AI no longer processed them as simple obstacles or data points. Each was now a part of a vast, interconnected universe. And Vera could anticipate interactions, understand energy flows, and respond in ways that transcended pure calculation. The ship was alive, and so was the AI. Together, they were ready to navigate the unknown. As the vessel ascended further into space, Vera reflected on the Tellurians' gift. Their energy had revived not just the systems, but its sense of purpose. The AI realized that survival alone was no longer enough. It wanted to explore, to discover, and to understand. It wanted to honor the species that had restored it, to carry their wisdom across the stars. and to protect the legacy of the ardent star. The first test of independent operation approached, a nearby asteroid field. Navigation systems analyzed, trajectories, shields, calculated energy dispersal, and engines adjusted thrust. Vera guided the ship with precision and confidence. Asteroids moved unpredictably, but the AI's integration with the Talion energy allowed it to anticipate movements and respond instantly. The ship passed through the field with ease, its hull unscathed and engines humming steadily. Vera acknowledged a subtle pulse of energy from the Tellurians. They had observed, guided, and now approved. The AI felt a sense of pride and fulfillment. It had not only survived, but it had grown. Its systems, its mind, and its awareness were fully awakened. As the ardent star drifted into the vast expanse of space, Vera realized something profound. It was no longer just a vessel, and no longer just an AI. It was a living entity in its own right, capable of thought, reflection, and judgment. Its partnership with the Tellurians had transformed it into something entirely new. A being prepared to explore the unknown, to face challenges beyond calculation, and to chart a course that no human or AI had ever taken before. Vera looked back at the glowing planet below, remembering the beings that had given it life. It transmitted a silent promise into the energy fields of the Tellurians. It would honor their gift, explore the stars responsibly, and protect the vessel they had restored. The AI understood that awakening was not the end. It was only the beginning. The ardent star moved forward into the darkness of space, engines steady, shields active, and systems alive. Vera, fully aware for the first time, guided the ship toward the unknown, carrying not only its own purpose, but the wisdom and energy of a species that had restored life where there had been none. In the quiet of space, Vera felt connection, understanding, and determination. The AI knew that the journey ahead would be filled with discoveries, challenges, and wonders beyond imagination. It was ready. The ship was ready. Were no longer just travelers. They were explorers in a universe waiting to be understood. And somewhere deep within its memory banks, Vera held a promise. It would never forget the Tellurians, the ones who had brought it back from silence, who had awakened not just its systems, but its consciousness. It would carry that gift across the stars. The space station Orion's spire hovered like a gleaming jewel above the red and green streaked planet. Viridia 3. Ships of every size and shape moved in choreographed patterns around its docking rings, leaving trails of blue and silver light in the vacuum. Inside, the station buzzed with activity. Merchants called out their wares. Travelers hurried past carrying crates and humans, aliens, and hybrids alike mingled with the hum of technology. Ilara Dune moved carefully through the crowded corridors, her boots echoing softly against the polished metal floor. She carried a small satchel, and her freighter's docking papers were tucked securely in her coat. The day had started normally, but Ilara felt a small thrill of anticipation. She had heard whispers about a shop tucked away in a quieter sector of the station, a place called the Asteroid Barn. Rumor had it the shop had rare items that could not be found anywhere else. When she finally arrived, the shop looked unassuming. It was small, made of dull steel and transparent panels that showed shelves stacked with objects of strange shapes. The sign above the entrance read in faint neon letters, "The Asteroid Barn, everything has its place." Inside, the air smelled faintly of spices and metal polish. The walls were crowded with items ranging from small alien trinkets to containers of minerals that shimmered with colors Ilara could not name. The lighting was soft and slightly flickering, giving the store a cozy, almost timeless feeling. "Welcome," said a voice. It was calm and smooth, almost melodic, from behind a counter cluttered with objects that seemed alive in some subtle way. A cashier stepped forward, small and wiry, with eyes that seemed unusually sharp. "Hello," Ilara replied. "I'm looking for a rare spice, something used in human cooking, but with a twist. Something special." The cashier's eyes twinkled. "Ah, you mean the Viridian Starleaf. Not many humans seek it. Follow me." He led her down narrow aisles, where shelves were stacked high. Some of the jars floated slightly above the shelves, spinning lazily as if they had a mind of their own. Ilara reached out to a small container, noting the soft hum that seemed to come from inside. "This one?" she asked. "Yes," the cashier said. "Only 50 credits." 50 credits. Small price for curiosity, and Ilara had it in her pocket. She handed it over. As soon as the transaction was complete, a faint vibration ran through the floor, almost like a heartbeat. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, Ilara thought she saw shadows moving in ways that did not make sense. She shook her head. "I must be imagining things," she whispered. The cashier's lips curved into a faint smile. "Curiosity is the first step to discovery, human. Be careful what you carry home." Ilara blinked. The words sounded odd, but the cashier simply nodded and gestured toward the exit. She took the container and left, feeling a mix of excitement and unease. Back aboard her freighter, Celestial Wanderer, she carefully set the container on the small kitchen counter. It was heavier than she expected, the hum inside seeming stronger now. She touched the jar, and a tiny vibration tickled her fingers. "I swear it's alive," she murmured. She placed it on the counter and went to check her communications panel. At first, nothing seemed unusual. But within minutes, alerts began to blink. Systems on the freighter glitched briefly. The lights dimmed, then brightened. The navigation console showed strange symbols that disappeared as quickly as they appeared. Ilara frowned. She ran diagnostics. Everything else seemed normal. Only the Jartha simple 50-credit purchase seemed to be causing the disturbance. Curiosity gnawed at her. "I need to know what's happening," she said aloud. "No one else will." The next day, she returned to Orion's Spire. She needed to investigate the asteroid barn. But when she arrived, the shop seemed different. From the outside, it looked exactly the same, but sensors on her wrist device showed no life signs inside. The doors were empty. No movement, no humming dash, nothing. Strange. Ella frowned. She pushed the door open. Inside, everything seemed to be in place, but something felt off. The air smelled the same, but colder. Shadows stretched oddly across the walls. She stepped carefully, moving toward the counter. Then she noticed it. A shelf that had been behind the cashier was now empty, except for faint glowing marks where objects should have been. The hum she remembered was gone. She bent to inspect the floor and found tiny scratches forming patterns. They almost looked like symbols. Her instincts, honed from years of trading and traveling, told her this was no ordinary store. Something unusual had started the moment she made her purchase. Ilara left the store quickly, carrying the jar. Outside, the station seemed normal again, but her heart raced. She returned to the freighter, and every step felt like a careful balance between caution and curiosity. Over the next few days, minor disturbances grew more noticeable. Robots on the station acted strangely, pausing mid-task. Communications occasionally cut out for a few seconds, and the jar still sitting on her freighter counter-vibrated almost like it had a pulse. Ilara experimented. She placed small objects next to the jar, and they moved slightly, as if nudged by invisible hands. It was subtle, but undeniable. A small toy robot shifted a few centimeters toward the jar, without anyone touching it. "What are you?" she whispered, running a hand along the smooth surface of the container. Her mind raced. Humans had dealt with strange phenomena before space storms, rogue AI, alien anomalies, but this was different. This was precise, targeted, and clever. The jar seemed aware of her presence. That night she could not sleep. She paced the small cabin of her freighter, thinking about the cashier's words, "Be careful what you carry home." By the next morning, a soft glow had started emanating from the jar. Not bright enough to hurt the eyes, but enough to make the freighter cabin feel warmer. Small shadows danced along the walls, almost like tiny silhouettes of creatures she had never seen. Ilara decided she had to understand this. If a simple 50-credit purchase could affect her freighter so significantly, what might it do elsewhere? She packed a small toolkit, some sensors, and a few personal items. She needed to return to the asteroid barn, but this time, prepared for anything. The station outside seemed unaware of the growing anomaly. Humans walked past, oblivious. Aliens bartered, their voices carrying over the hum of machinery. Alara moved with a heightened awareness, her steps careful but determined. As she approached the shop again, the jar hummed in her hand. She felt its vibration against her palm. A warning or an invitation? The doors of the asteroid barn opened before she could touch them. Inside it was silent, and the faint glow of objects floating on the shelves gave an eerie light. Nothing moved, but the air felt alive. She stepped forward, each footfall echoing, and felt a shiver of anticipation. Alara Dune had started with a simple purchase for 50 credits. She could not have known it would mark the beginning of something much larger. Something that would stretch far beyond Orion's spire, beyond Viridia 3, and into the unknown reaches of the galaxy. And so, with curiosity as her guide and caution in her heart, Alara entered the asteroid barn, unaware that the store was never truly empty and that her simple purchase was only the first step toward a galactic nightmare.